What is up, my fellow Path of Exile 2 enjoyers? Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my Stormweaver Impending Doom Archmage character. This character so far I have very little gear for, but it's been working out really well. I have 2.9k mana, which all of my damage pretty much scales off of mana. I'll explain the interaction in just a little bit. And as you guys know, there are characters running around with 9k mana. So you have a long way ahead of us. This is on solo self on hardcore, so my gear is quite limited, although the main reason why I ended up going this build is because I couldn't really solve a lot of the stun issues that energy shield builds tend to have with Eldritch Battery on hardcore. But with this amulet, we can preserve our energy shield and things get really crazy. Although, if I were to be playing this build on softcore, I probably wouldn't recommend you even get it. So if like budget is an issue for you, I think it's pretty budget safe to say if you're able to play this character to this effect on solo self on hardcore. But for the main interaction, the way that we do things is we use our conductivity, if I can find it because I'm blind, with Impending Doom. Impending Doom is something that supports curse skills that we cast ourselves, causing them to trigger Doom Blast on cursed enemies when the curse expires. This has a cooldown of 0.15 and it's got 3 uses. The cast time is irrelevant. That is, it is a triggered ability, and then we deal base chaos damage equal to 15% of your current mana, so not your maximum. So managing your mana is incredibly important, which is the reason why we ended up going for Stormweaver, because Arcane Surge is just incredible at scaling that. People like John Groan have attempted to steal my build so far, so, you know, be careful. It might get nerfed. But he did go for a Gemling, as far as I know, which gives you more total mana. But I think for my more budget setup and more defensive setup, I'm never going to be able to get enough gear to sustain my mana, so this is just what we're doing so far. But you might be thinking, wait, what's going on? I mean, that's not that mana that you're requiring to cast these spells. Well, we are Archmage, so even though Impending Doom does deal chaos damage, we are pretty much a 90% lightning damage build. We're not scaling any of the chaos, we're scaling all lightning, and that is thanks to the best gem in the entire game, Archmage. So Archmage allows us to get 8% of damage as extra lightning damage for each 100 maximum mana you have. Obviously this scales up, so it goes more than 8%. The quality is incredible on it as well. And this essentially means that every time our Impending Doom goes off, the Archmage is applied to it, and we're able to blast for an incredible amount of damage. And as you can see, it's a pretty good synergy because Archmage scales off of damage and Impending Doom scales off of damage as well, which makes for a tremendous synergy. The way that we're proccing our Impending Doom is by overriding it the same way as it is in PoE1, meaning that we use Curse Ground, which makes it so that the curse is applied instantly onto the ground, and then we recast it. Right now, I'm using Spell Echo for it, which means that I only need to click once for it to cast twice. What's cool about Spell Echo 2 is that it essentially forces the second cast of the ability. So if you've played with Spell Echo before, there is a delay, but because we are limited to just one Curse Ground, it means that it will proc faster the more cast speed you get, which, again, based off of my gear, I have very little cast speed, I have very little of anything really, and it still has not been a problem so far. And we have so little of everything that yeah, we're having to use inspiration to manage my cost. I don't have the correct anoint on my amulet. You get it, I'm poor. Okay, it's problematic. But going back to the Spell Echo, you don't necessarily have to be using it. I don't think. I have been practicing without it as well, and for the most part it plays pretty well because this ability has a lot of really good damage support. I might even go crit in the future. Single target has proven to be a little bit problematic. I would say overall right now, without the gear, that's been the weakest point of the build, but I believe with the amount of scaling that we get in the long term, it won't be. But as it is right now, it is kind of a weak point, so in the future, hopefully we can get rid of inspiration, hopefully we can anoint things like mental toughness, and this will allow us to use 2 more powerful damage support. Things like Consider Casting is incredible with the recent buffs, because we essentially do have a cap on how much cast speed we can get on the build. Right now I only have 0.63 cast time, which is very, very little, but technically if we don't get any cooldown reduction, because of the way that the cooldown works on Impending Doom, with Spell Echo, we should be able to get this down all the way to 0.3, and that way we're maximizing our cooldown. And then if we ever get even more cast speed somehow, you know, we can start focusing on cooldown recovery. But that's a long way away and many build diaries from now, so I'm just trying to walk you guys through what I've got running right now. That's pretty much it for the main interaction. When it comes to the supporting abilities, I am still thinking about some form of a weapon swap to complement the single target, but I haven't come up with anything that really does that much. It might end up being some totem setup or something like that. There's just so many angles that you can take here. But for AoE clearing and for single target, we do use Sigil of Power. This is just an incredible ability for any sort of mana-based situation. I am using Blasphemy right now. I'll talk a little bit about the gear because it does play into it pretty heavily, but right now I am using Blasphemy with Temporal Chains. We are technically a curse build, so we do get a bunch of different curse things on the skill tree. We do get a little bit of curse effect. We might get a lot in the end game depending on where things go, but yeah. Mana Remnants, just because I have way too much spirit, I probably will not be running this on the final setup. Grim Feast, this is incredible because its energy shield is broken. What's new? Then for the Archmage, I'm just running Lightning Mastery with Clarity. You can obviously put the Clarity anywhere, and then the Lightning Mastery is pretty much the only thing that we can use to juice up our Archmage. And then there's also the exposure setup. This is going to be Ball Lightning, Strip Away, Lightning Exposure. And right now I'm trying out Consider Casting as I wasn't really getting enough shock. Primarily probably because I'm not doing enough damage based off of, you know, having insufficient gear. But you can also try Orb of Storms if you prefer that. You can use Cast on Shock setup as we are shocking with Conductivity. The important part about shocking with the Ball Lightning is that we are applying exposure with the additional 30% increased effect and all the other nodes that we get from the skill tree. So this doesn't need to hit hard, it just needs to shock. And then we get the exposure and we can shock with our main ability pretty much with 24/7 uptime. Obviously with this character only being 74 on Hardcore, I only have the Arcane Surge and the Force of Will down here, which doesn't quite have enough scaling. In the future I might go for the Chill, I might go for the Shock, I don't know, I might go for Heart of Storm, I might go for Scouring Winds, probably not this last one. But all of these options are incredibly powerful. Stormweaver is just a really good class. And yeah, this is what my skill tree is looking like right now. There's obviously a very heavy focus on a lot of mana on this tree. I might be changing things, although not too substantially in the future. I do want to go for Eldritch Battery, Mind Over Matter, and Chaos Inoculation. I have 2 of the 3 components of that. But you might be thinking to yourself, why is your energy shield still present? And that is because of the previously mentioned Everlasting Gaze. This allows us to gain 30% of maximum mana as extra maximum energy shield, which doesn't convert. And it's great because we can continue to scale it with energy shield nodes, which we have an abundance of available, and they are generally very, very strong. This also prevents monsters from getting to our mana and hurting our total current mana, therefore reducing our damage. So just incredible value. And the reason why I was saying that this is something that really makes these sort of builds hardcore viable is because we can get things like the gain 20% of maximum energy shield as additional stun threshold. Getting stunned is pretty brutal. If you can get a charm or multiple charms, that would be great, because that way you're going to be able to run a thawing charm, which is going to prevent you from getting frozen, although you can run dream fragments as well. And then on top of it, you can run a stun prevention charm as well. But keep in mind that many people think that it makes you immune to stun. It doesn't. It just makes it so that you can't be stunned after you've already been stunned. But on hardcore, sometimes things, you know, stun you once and it's enough for your character to go straight to standard. So something to keep in mind there. And when it comes to the skill tree, to the rest of the skill tree, again, it's just mana and we will be scaling lightning damage. I just found out today that, courtesy of chat, of course, and especially Janitor, that the way that additional damage works, that extra damage works, is essentially it being converted. Therefore, we cannot scale with chaos damage for the base damage of our ability, as we aren't really doing chaos damage. We are doing lightning, and we're entirely scaling the Archmage. Therefore, I will be going for all of these lightning nodes and maybe some of the lightning stuff down here in the future. Pretty much when it comes to the skill tree. And for gear, I'll quickly hover over it. You don't want to be looking at this gear. I mean, you guys can pause the video, look at how incredibly dire I am in need of upgrades, but this is just the best of what I was able to do right now. Generally, you want mana, you want energy shield, you're avoiding life because it doesn't really do much for you outside of the stun threshold, and eventually we're going to go for chaos inoculation. Try to cap your resistances. We won't be needing chaos res in the future. Intelligence is incredibly valuable because it scales our mana, and that's pretty much it. Cast speed is something that I hold to be very, very valuable, which I don't have nearly enough, as previously mentioned. I don't have any cast speed anywhere other than the implicit on this ring, so pretty bad. I might go for crit in the future just because it's so easy to do if you are running a scepter, which I am currently. I might go crit with a scepter. I might not do any of those things and end up using a scepter in my main hand, maybe. With a threaded light, if I manage to find one. This will allow us to scale our increased spell damage with spirit, which is just incredible, as spell damage is the primary way that we are scaling our abilities, primarily due to arcane intensity. This node is super good. 3% increased spell damage per 100 maximum mana. Again, it plays into the whole mana stacking thing. And yeah, I just don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what's gonna be available to me in the future. I think most likely, if I had the possibility to do so, I would go for the threaded light setup with a scepter in my main hand, as my wand doesn't really ever provide enough to justify it. It would be a lot less defensive, but this would also allow me to continue to run Blasphemy in the future, which I think Blasphemy is kind of OP with temporal chains. I gotta say, generally mobs are scary because they just run around so quickly in the game right now, and slowing them down is going to provide a lot of survivability. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that I've got for you guys as of right now. That's my setup. That's what I'm looking forward to in the future, and I hope that I'm going to be able to update you with a hopefully not dead character sometime in the next upcoming few days. Thanks for watching. Appreciate ya. See you in the next one. Remember to subscribe. Bye.